Hi, everyone. My name is Ann Williams. I'm the Global Insights Director here at Innova, and I'm very happy to be here with you. And today I'm going to talk about our top 10 trends. Some of you might know us and know that every year we always focus on top 10 trends as our flagship product. And what we've done today is we've looked at our trends and we looked at Asia to see where they fit in. So today I'll take you through the top 10 trends in the food industry in APAC. So you can see here that we listed our top 10 global trends and then the ones in APAC. And I think before I start, it's important to also just make sure that you know that we know trends can be very local. They can be, on a local level, on a country level, on a region level. But there comes a point where you have to kind of pick and what you're going to cover. So we've taken our trends, and you can see if we look at even the top 5 trends on the left-hand column, there are some differences. So globally, overall, we see if we look at all those consumer insights that we have, shared planet is the most important trend. But if we look at APAC, we really start to see the rise of plant-based. We also see gut glory in position number 2. And that's really interesting because functional foods and health plays a much bigger role in the food industry in Asia Pacific than it does in Europe or in the US, for example. Some of that is regulatory. Some of it is also just driven by the differences in consumers. So as you see, the trends are the same, but you can see the orders are slightly different. So I'm now going to take you through those trends. We're going to go through each one, and I will explain what we see, why we see it, and what's happening with consumers. So we do a lot of consumer research, and for our global trends, we look at 11 countries. So we look at countries in every region, and you can see in Asia, we look at India, China, and Indonesia. I know that's different from a consumer in Taiwan or Korea, but in general, we have to look at the region and apply what we see happening. And just keep that in mind that we could also really drill down to a much more local level. But for the purpose of today, we will look at these trends in the region as a whole. So as I mentioned, plant-based, been a really big trend. We also see a lot of regional differences with plant-based. We know that in Europe, it's very well defined, been really going on for a long time, but Asia is catching up fast. And we see a lot of things happening here. If you look at the consumers, when we ask them, why do you purchase plant-based products, you can see it's the same as we see in the rest of the world. It is healthier. Also, what we see happening also in Asia is better for the planet, variety to my diet, and a lot of people say it tastes good. I think another thing to remember, if you think about the development of plant-based, Asia has really the longest history in plant-based products. If you think about soy milk, heavily consumed across the region, tofu, tempeh in Indonesia. So there's been a long history. So now what we're seeing is it's also getting a modern twist. And you see a couple of examples of products here, the Veef from Australia that really being promoted on protein, clean label, chef crafted so that it tastes really good, also carbon neutral. And then there's another product there from Japan, which is all about sustainability and treating the planet and animals as well as humans in the right way. We see it developing in different channels. So we see the rise of plant-based also in food service in the region. And you can just see a couple of examples here from Domino's and Burger King, also with local partners. We're seeing, as I mentioned, a lot more variety in retail. And here's, again, a couple of examples there, one from the Philippines, one in Malaysia. But we also see, in some ways, in terms of being a first mover, the Good Meat launch in Singapore. It's the first in the world with the cellular meat that's been launched onto the market. So it could be that Asia and some of the countries in the region are a fantastic place to launch something completely new. You always have to look at the regulatory situation, of course, to see what's possible. But in this case, Singapore was certainly a world first. And if you think about how do you innovate, what type of strategy should you have? So again, looking about why would people, and this is India, China, Indonesia again, Why would they want to buy or avoid buying plant-based? I already mentioned health is the #1 driver for all consumers in every region. Better for the environment, but also brings variety to the diet. But you have quite a few consumers who don't buy it because of poor taste and textures. Meeting expectations is really, really important. Other consumers say it's too processed or too artificial, and it is just expensive in a lot of cases. So that will be a big barrier for a lot of consumers. And then you see some nice examples here from Thai Union, the giant seafood company from Thailand, also entering the market for plant-based seafood. So again, there is a lot of innovation and activity across the region. And as the trend says, this is not about mimicking anymore. This is really about creating a canvas for innovation. And you can see here products from Malaysia, from India, from Japan, all with different types of products. But we see a 73% growth of plant-based and vegan claims in food and beverage launches, excluding meat substitutes. So in the region. So this really does highlight that we're seeing a whole new level of innovation that's plant-based. That's not just about mimicking meat or mimicking milks. The second trend that I mentioned, gut glory. So this is all about the biome. You can see here really clearly 70% of consumers across those 3 countries say that gut health is key to achieving holistic well-being. The Japanese were the first movers in this space, but fermented foods have played a strong role all across Asia for a very long time. And of course, consumers really realize that there are a lot of health benefits from this. We asked consumers, what other things do you think are influenced by gut health? And again, this is the same that we see in other regions. Immune health is #1. But consumers also tell us that their energy levels are better, they sleep better, their mood is also impacted by having a good, healthy gut. So ingredients are so important now. Consumers understand them more. It becomes a very strong foundation on which, or even a platform in some cases, to launch a product. So here we ask consumers how familiar they were with different ingredients. That's on the x-axis. And the y-axis is how effective those ingredients are. So we asked about ingredients related to gut health. And you can see the big orange bubble up there on the right-hand side. This is fiber. So this is the number of food and beverage launches that have a gut health claim and selected ingredient with fiber. And you can see, again, consumer understanding and also the bubble size is the number of products. Really well understood. The benefits are understood. Consumers know what it is. If you look at probiotics, it's also, consumers are very familiar in Asia, also consider them very effective. The bubble is slightly smaller, but that just, I think that's normal. But again, highly regarded, very strong platform for innovation here around probiotics. And you can see down on the watch list, we have postbiotics. This is a newer topic. It's been out in skincare for probably 20 years, but now we're starting to see postbiotics. A postbiotic could be something like butyric acid. It's a byproduct or it's a result of the combination of a pre and probiotic. So it could also be a food, a fermented food is also considered a postbiotic. So there's different ways to play around with that, but that's definitely something to think about in the future. The third trend is around local, back to the roots. So consumers tell us that they value the functionality, the freshness, the authenticity of local food. You can see there, we asked consumers, again, in the 3 countries that we've been talking about, India, China, Indonesia, when you're buying food and beverages, which factors have become more important? Consumers care a lot about flavor. They care more about freshness. They care more about nutritional benefit. And they also, after 2 years of the pandemic, they also tell us that they're going to be looking for these benefits a lot more in the future to be buying these products. So we don't see demand decreasing at all. And again, just a couple of nice examples. Here's a product from Vietnam that says proudly handcrafted in the Mekong Delta, and another one from India that also tells you locally sourced from the farms in Tamil Nadu. So again, lots of ways to market around local. Other ways to do this, if you want to look for, again, a strategy around some of the different benefits that consumers value. So there's community conscious. And here's a nice example from Japan. It's a direct production shopping site that connects farmers and consumers. In Europe, we have crowd farming. which is the same thing. Farmers markets do the same thing. And I think in Asia in general, you've typically had a lot of street markets and people had access to a lot of fresher foods on the street. You have wet markets and so on. So this just kind of reinforces this, but maybe there's a way to relaunch this or to capitalize on, chickens just like you used to buy in the wet market, for example, but a way to connect somehow that community feeling. Fresh comfort food is there in the middle. So this is an oxney soup that's made with fresh ingredients in traditional cauldrons, again, connecting to that heritage around cooking this recipe and also the way it's cooked. And then on the right, this is also interesting, naturally functional. So this is a company in New Zealand that's looking to popularize seaweed. It's very popular in Asia, but this could also become a really important market also to consumers in Europe or in the US or Latin America by talking about the history of that ingredient and its importance in Asia. Amplified experiences. So we've all spent a lot of time inside for the past 2 years, and for many of us, cooking and food was our only source of entertainment. So here you can see that consumers want that to continue. They enjoyed what they did with food. So 2/3 of consumers in Asia Pacific say, after COVID, I want to be much more adventurous with my food and beverage choices. So again, there's lots of different ways to make consumers excited about food. And you see a couple of examples here. Unilever made these posters that look like really retro travel posters offering flavors of the world for their Magnum bar, their ice cream bars. But you can also see here an example from Korea of it looks like a little coal. It's a snack. It's colored with squid ink to make it black like that, but it looks like charcoal, but really fun type of product. And on the right, here's a shoyu caramel ice cream. So using soy sauce, a very traditional ingredient, in something that's a little bit less traditional to make it really fun. And that was launched in Indonesia. Also, the fact that people do want to celebrate, have an experience with food is also, we call it, really generating some kind of wacky ideas and new product development. So here's the example of Cup Noodle creating drinks out of some of their most popular flavors. And this really does hit upon that consumer need to see more technological collaborations to create indulgent flavors, textures, or formats. This cup noodle beverage certainly does that. Consumers also tell us, I want to taste or try new products, but only if I'm familiar with the brand. So maintaining that trust is really important. It's a great way for some brands to also revigorate their brand and to make it look more innovative and more adventurous. So you can see here, there's some chocolate liqueurs which have been launched in Shanghai, a collaboration between a Danish company famous for their chocolate liqueurs and a brand in China. And then another crafted chocolate stout that was launched in India. So again, trusted brands, but with a twist. Trend number 5, shared planet. And globally, this was our most important trend this year, because we see that consumers are really worried about the planet. We saw lots of natural disasters, for example, and you can see here that in Asia, 44% of consumers say, I also include environmental well-being when I think about holistic health. So one thing that we definitely see happening with consumers is that health is not just about physical health. It's also about your mental health. It's also about your spiritual health. And with spiritual, that doesn't mean religious. It can also mean feeling good about what you eat. And sustainability definitely fits in that. If it's something based on human welfare, animal welfare, it's become really important to consumers. We see this health of the planet. It's also starting to gain a lot more attraction by consumers in Asia Pacific. And you can see when we asked, which of these global issues concern you the most? Health of the population dropped by 9 points last year. It went from 45% of consumers saying that was their most important global issue down to 36%. And health of the planet went from 30% to 34%. So again, more and more consumers are starting to pay a lot more attention to sustainability. And again, that can mean many different things. It can be really committed to the environment through the packaging with the examples that you see here from Indonesia. It's a bottle that's made from 100% recycled plastic and it's also recyclable, or the upcycled products that you see here from Pepsi. Again, Education, awareness, we know that governments are also starting to respond more in Asia. And 40% of consumers in Indonesia say that they have taken personal action to manage or improve their environmental well-being over the past 12 months. So this is something that's getting a lot of attention everywhere. And again, you see on the right-hand side where we ask consumers to choose the factors that influence their purchasing decisions. And you can see that when we compare 2021 to 2018, the environment has really doubled with consumers. So 12% of consumers included environmental claims, and it falls below natural and health, but still you can see it's rapidly becoming more important. So even if it's not the main purchase driver, it might be the tiebreaker between choosing product A or product B. So that's a really important thing to consider. And just to highlight a few of the companies that are very active in the region and that they are also making very public commitments to sustainability. Every company has to, even for investment reasons, for the government, to some extent regulatory, but it's the right thing to do. Consumers expect companies to do the right thing. And so more and more, this is all the consumers will get more interested in it, just as I showed you on the previous slide. It's really important then to also build trust with a very tangible communication strategy. So you see here that 2/3 of consumers saying sustainability is very important when it comes to my diet. Does not mean it's the most important purchase driver, but as I said, it could be the tiebreaker. And you can see just a few examples here. There are more and more certifications. Again, you have to make sure that your consumers understand, recognize the certification that you're using if you choose to do that. There's a lot of opportunities to upcycle. Here's an example between Danone and Alphamart and Plastic Pay. They've created a recycling vending machine to just make it easier to do it. And then here's also a restaurant chain that has carbon labeled their menu. I would caution being careful about that because it would be very difficult for a lot of consumers to know if those numbers are big or small. And I think a lot of consumers, maybe I don't understand the specifics of how much carbon we should be emitting or using. But again, finding a way of something that's meaningful. And in this case, they say it's meaningful, but it could be also useful to have a reference to highlight how low this is. But finding a good way with a good communication strategy is important, and they have certainly done that here. Trend number 6 is shifting occasions. So again, the pandemic really did change our eating occasions, also helped to create new ones. So we just made a matrix here of out of home and at home versus food service and retail. And again, Asia has always had a very big out of home eating market, structurally quite different to what we would see in Europe or in the United States. Asia probably, or Latin America, probably somewhere in between. But creating a safer environment. So we see lots of news about robot waiters and waitresses, robot delivery systems. Here's an example in Thailand. Looking at partnerships, here's an example, a new collaboration between consumer and retail channels. So this is a cake that's made from oatmeal in partnership with Oatly. 3/4 of consumers say they like to try out new delivery concepts. So things like fast delivery, like gorillas that we see where people come on a bicycle in a really short amount of time, drone delivery, and so on. So again, consumers are very open to this type of innovation. The other thing that we see happening is more out-of-home brands, like you see Baskin-Robbins here, also now collaborating with companies to create in-home experiences as well. Again, I mentioned amplified experiences, but this falls really well within that. And here's 2 nice examples of out-of-home types of experiences that are now possible in-home. So this is a sushi restaurant chain, which rents out this little conveyor belt to some diners. Again, would be very fun to have as a party or for a special occasion. And here's Asahi beer with a real packaging innovation to give you the experience of drinking draft beer mugs that like you would have at an izakawa in Japan. You can see the pictures there with the bubbles, and they've also highlighted that you won't cut yourself on the can. So again, very interesting innovations to bring some extra excitement to your eating occasion. Trend number 7 is tech to table. We talked so long about clean label and about food becoming more simple, but technology has an enormous role to play, also in the face of consumers. So you can see here that 2/3 of consumers in Asia Pacific say I'm open to consuming foods that have been produced using new technologies. We have seen through a study we did, if you explain the technology, explain the benefit of the technology, consumers are very open to it. And Asian consumers are the most open to it. We see, for example, French and German consumers being very conservative when it comes to this, but in Asia in general, we see a lot of openness. Some of the ways that technology is being applied, it's in things like personalized nutrition. So this is an example of 3D printing, but there's lots of apps and things that you can use to monitor your health or more personalize your health. As I mentioned earlier, we saw innovation in Singapore, really first to the world with cellular. Here's another partnership for microbial-based alternative proteins, also in Singapore, and also things like lab forming. So this is an example of cultivated chocolate, which is being grown in labs as well. So again, a product that we all love, very indulgent, but grown in a completely new way, leveraging technology. Also, we talked about cellular technology, cellular meat in Singapore, but again, you see that 2/3 of consumers say that this could potentially be the future of the food industry. So really highlighting that openness to accept these technologies. And I think one of the big breakthroughs here is from Korea, that they've made a fetal bovine serum-free cell culture media. That's really a mouthful, but to make more ethical cultivated meat as well. So again, a huge amount of innovation that's very technology driven. Trend number 8 is around upcycling. So consumers are very interested in taking products that were once considered waste, and they're being upcycled. So you can see 44% of products in Asia say a product that has upcycled ingredients is more appealing. It has an interesting story. Of course, it's interesting. It also communicates innovation and so on. And just a couple of examples to highlight that. So here's a tea made of cascara, so it's coffee bean waste in Indonesia. And then here's an example of dole that are also taking banana leaves and creating it into package. So again, and also using ugly fruit, we see that happening as well. So lots of different ways to do this. We've seen a 48% increase in food and beverage launches with a food waste or some type of upcycling plan. Reducing food waste or promoting upcycling is another way for consumers to tick the sustainability box for themselves. And you can see consumers also associate upcycled ingredients with health and nutrition, with freshness, also with sustainability. So there's a lot of benefits that you can attribute to those upcycled ingredients in addition to just the sustainability. And this is a nice example from Japan. Again, this is a direct, it's a food delivery service, farm packages and so on. But here you can see that they made a banana peel jam in the product. So they're also making sure that they minimize food waste by turning those products into something new. Trend number 9, voice of the consumer. Consumers absolutely expect to have a bigger say in the products that are being made. And you can see here 5 in 6 consumers say companies should listen to consumers. And so again, social media becomes a way to have that conversation. And more companies are doing it. So this is an example of a company in Malaysia that is letting consumers try their tea in a very personalized way, different levels of sugar, choose the flavor they like the most, the amount of ice they like in the product. But again, they have a voice in making the perfect product for themselves. Other examples that we see, Cadbury's is allowing people to send their own message via a QR code. Companies are also asking for feedback from consumers to try to get better consumer insights, make that connection, get feedback about their new products or their brand. And this is what they were working on, the ruby red kiwi fruit, for example. They wanted to get younger consumers. So have a conversation with them. It's a perfect way to do it. And Nestle have also been experimenting. They got a lot of pushback on palm oil. So they have now created ways to release their campaigns to be a lot more transparent about what they're doing and so on, so that consumers can feel more trust with the companies as well. And the last trend is my food, my brand. So food choices have now become a signal of lifestyles and values. And you can imagine if you're walking around with a product that is really overpackaged, it kind of sends the message that you don't care about the environment. So consumers care more and more about the message that they send, and they want to buy products that align with their values. So here, again, we ask consumers, how important do you think these values are when it comes to your diet? So well-being makes perfect sense, but also humanitarianism. So making sure that there's no human impact, or as little as possible, or no negative human impact. And also inclusivity. That's really important. So these are also global trends that we see, and it's also nice to see them taking hold all around the world. And so we really have moved from a time when companies would target consumers based on consumption-related preferences to now also looking at their beliefs and their values and make sure that that's also reflected in the products that they buy. We see a 5% increase in products that are launched with an ethical human claim. That's a really difficult one to do, but you see some examples here. There are some products that claim to really support women. They will donate to women or support women's causes, or in this case, for example, support and empower women in the brewing industry. We see an 18% increase in products that say we will donate something. So they will donate to a foundation or something, but again, to make that connection to a cause that consumers care about. So there's a lot of different ways to do this, but food becomes that facilitator and another way for a consumer to take action to give support to their beliefs and values. Thank you for your attention. I hope everybody has some new ideas or a topic that maybe they want to dive into and learn a little bit better. So I wish you a lot of success with the rest of your conference, and thank you so much for listening to what I have to say.